The bag split open before it even hit the ground. I heard the tear first, sharp, sudden, then the dull scatter of everything I owned spilling across the pavement. Clothes, papers, small things that used to matter, all landing in pieces like they meant nothing. Which, to them, they didn't. "Maybe now you'll get the message," someone said from the doorway. I didn't look up right away. I didn't rush to pick anything up either. Because there was something about the moment that needed to settle first. The finality of it, the way it wasn't an argument anymore. It was a decision. "Don't just stand there," another voice added. "Take your stuff and go." I crouched slowly, gathering what I could, brushing dirt off things that would never really be clean again. Not because they were ruined, but because the moment had already changed them. Changed everything. "You can't keep coming back here like this," they continued. "It's embarrassing. Embarrassing." That word stayed longer than the rest. Not because it hurt, but because it revealed something. This wasn't about space. It wasn't about inconvenience. It was about how I made them look. I stood up, holding what was left of my things, and finally looked at them. Faces I had known. Voices I had trusted. People who had decided, quietly and completely, that I no longer belonged anywhere near them. "You're really doing this?" I asked. It wasn't emotional. It wasn't desperate. Just direct. They exchanged quick glances, like the answer had already been agreed on before I even asked. "You need to figure your life out," one of them said. "We can't keep dealing with this." "I wasn't asking you to," I replied. That didn't matter, because the outcome had already been decided. "Then take the hint," they said. "Find a life somewhere else." A small pause followed, not awkward, not uncertain, just finished. That was it. No explanation, no second chances, no attempt to soften it. Just a line drawn where I used to stand. I looked down at the things in my hands. What I could carry, what I could leave behind. And for a second, I almost laughed. Not because it was funny. Because it was clear. Clear in a way that removed all confusion. All doubt. All hesitation. I nodded once. "All right," I said. No one responded. Because they didn't expect that. They expected resistance. Emotion. Something they could react to. I didn't give them that. Instead, I turned and walked away. No rush. No anger. Just movement. Because staying would have meant asking for something that wasn't there anymore. And I wasn't going to do that. Not now. Not ever again. The street was quiet. Calm in a way that didn't match what had just happened. I walked without thinking about where I was going. Not because I didn't have options, but because I didn't need to decide anything yet. That moment wasn't about direction. It was about separation, and that had already happened. Hours passed before I stopped. Long enough for the noise in my head to settle into something quieter. Something more focused. I set my things down on a bench and sat there for a while, letting everything replay, not emotionally, not painfully, just clearly. Every comment, every look, every moment leading up to what had just happened. And then, something shifted, not outside, inside. Because once everything is taken away in a single moment, you stop pretending there's anything left to lose. And that changes how you think. I reached into my bag and pulled out my phone. Not to call anyone, not to ask for help. Just to check something, a detail, a confirmation, something I had been working toward quietly for longer than they ever realized. The screen lit up, and there it was, everything still in place, everything still moving forward, unaffected, because what they had just thrown away was never the thing that mattered. I leaned back slightly, exhaling slowly. Not relief, not satisfaction, just certainty. They thought they had removed me from their world, from their space, from their control, but the truth was, they had only stepped further into something they didn't understand, and they had done it without even noticing. I stood up again, picking up my things. This time, not weighed down by them, just carrying them, because they weren't the story anymore. They were just part of it. The rest? That was still unfolding, and by the time they realized what they had done, it wouldn't be a conversation anymore. It would be a situation they couldn't ignore. I took one last look back at the street. At the place I had just walked away from. At the people who thought they had ended something. And I understood one simple truth. They hadn't ended anything. They had just started something they weren't prepared for. The morning didn't feel different. That was the first thing I noticed. No dramatic shift. No sudden sense of change. Just the same quiet air, the same steady rhythm of everything moving forward like nothing had happened. But underneath that, everything had already changed. I sat at a small table, my phone in front of me, the documents open. Clean, precise, final. Not new, not rushed. Just completed. What happened the night before didn't create this moment. It only revealed the timing of it. I read through the details one more time, not because I needed to, but because I respected what it represented. Decisions made without noise. Moves made without announcement. Work done without needing anyone to see it. And now, it was ready. I made the call. A familiar voice answered immediately. "We're prepared," they said. Of course they were. Everything had been ready long before this. "I'm confirming," I replied. "Move forward. No hesitation. No delay. Just clarity." "Understood," they said. "Execution will begin right away." The call ended, and that was it. No dramatic moment. No visible shift. Just a line crossed that couldn't be uncrossed. I leaned back slightly, letting the silence settle around me. Somewhere else, they were waking up to the same day. The same routine. The same belief that nothing had changed. They were wrong. Hours passed. I didn't check my phone constantly. Didn't wait. Because I already knew how this would unfold. Not loudly. Not publicly. But in ways that couldn't be ignored once they started. The first call came sooner than expected. I looked at the screen. Recognized the number. Answered. "What did you do?" the voice demanded immediately. No greeting. No control. Just panic. I stayed calm. "I made a decision," I said. "This isn't funny," they snapped. "People are showing up. They're asking questions about ownership, about access, everything's being reviewed." "I know," I replied. Silence. Then, "How do you know?" they asked, their voice tightening. Because that was the part they couldn't understand. "Not yet." "Because I approved it," I said. That stopped everything. Completely. "You, what?" I didn't rush to explain. Didn't need to. The truth was already doing its work. "You told me to find a life," I continued. "So I focused on building one." "That doesn't explain this," they said quickly. "It does," I replied. "You just didn't pay attention when it mattered." Another pause. Longer this time. Heavier. "What are you talking about?" they asked. I stood up, walking toward the window, looking out at a world that felt exactly the same, but wasn't. "The street," I said. "The properties. The entire stretch you think you live on." I paused. "I own it." Silence. Not disbelief. Not denial. Something else. Realization. Slow. Unavoidable. "That's not possible," they said finally. "It already happened," I replied. "You don't just," they started. "No," I agreed. "You don't. Not overnight." Another pause. "Then how?" they asked. And there it was. The question that mattered. The one they should have been asking long before this moment. Quietly, I said, "That answer didn't satisfy them. It wasn't meant to." "You're saying, all of this, everything," they struggled. "Yes." The word landed simply. "But it carried everything." "And now?" they asked, their voice no longer steady. I leaned slightly against the window, watching as the world moved forward like nothing had changed. Because for most people, it hadn't. But for them, it had. "Now," I said, "things move differently." "How?" they pressed. I didn't answer immediately. Because the truth didn't need to be rushed. "It means," I said finally, "the space you thought you controlled, isn't yours anymore." Another silence. Deeper this time. Because now, they understood. Not everything, but enough. "You did this because of last night?" they asked. That question almost made me smile. Not because it was wrong. Because it was small. "No," I said. "Last night just made it visible." Nothing came back. Because there was nothing left to argue. Nothing left to deny. Everything they thought they had decided, everything they thought they had control over, was already part of something bigger, something they never considered. "What do we do?" they asked quietly. That question changed everything, not because of the words, because of what it meant. Dependence, uncertainty, a shift in power they weren't prepared for. I thought about it for a moment. Not emotionally, not personally, just clearly. "You move forward," I said. "How?" they asked again. "The same way I did," I replied. "Without assuming anything belongs to you." That landed. Not harsh, not aggressive, just true. "I didn't think," they started. "I know," I said. And that was enough. Because that was the entire point. They didn't think. They assumed. They dismissed. They decided. And now, they understood the cost of that. I ended the call. No final words. No closure needed. Because the situation itself was the closure. I stepped away from the window, the quiet of the room settling around me. Not victory. Not revenge. Just balance. The kind that doesn't come from taking something away, but from revealing what was already there. They had thrown my things away, told me to find a life, removed me from their space like I didn't belong. And they were right about one thing. I did find a life. Just not the one they expected. And now, they were living in it.